Now, the next question I have is, how is it all possible? Because it's really cool. And I think what I meant by that is, yeah, you have
My
you.
brain was like loading for like the Mac Beach Ball icon that like my brain was like trying to process.
Hello, it's Henry from the future. This interview was conducted over Discord across two different countries, so as you can probably imagine, there were a little bit of technical difficulties at some points. Nothing crazy and nothing really until later in the interview. But I also messed up the window size of the actual Discord application while I was recording this interview, so I was out of frame for most of the interview, but what matters is that you can see Thayer and you can hear the entire interview. If you want to check out Thayer's music, it's going to be linked in the description. And be sure to check out their latest album, Mongoose, coming out on February 28th. For any interview inquiries, please email this email on screen. And without further ado, let's get started.
What's up, everybody? My name's Henry. I love music. This is where I talk about it, and I am joined by the one, the only, the absolute madman of a producer.
Thayerperiod. That's me.
Beautiful.
Live from Japan.
Live from Japan. This
Live from Japan.
Not only is this the first online interview I've done, first online overseas interview. So
International.
International. We're
Round the globe.
We're
breaking
so
records
many,
everywhere.
so many records
Oh,
have been
yeah.
broken. Well,
Yeah.
how are you? I know I'm not sure how long you've been in Japan, but I'm sure it's a crazy transition.
Yeah, it's definitely been kind of weird. It's been cool though.
That's
It definitely I've been here I think now officially like a month and a half
Man.
around, maybe a little less than that. It's definitely like I'd say like the month mark was like when it started to feel like normal.
Yeah.
I would say. Yeah, it's definitely crazy. I'm like getting my ass kicked honestly because I'm like back in school and it's like we have 3 hours of class a day Monday through Friday. And so like having to go back to like the schooling system after graduating college, I'm like, damn, I have to like study and shit. Like I'm like my brain forgot how to do all this
Right.
stuff of like how to actually pay attention for long periods of time. Like I
Right.
feel like all the brain rot on TikTok is like destroyed my ability to like concentrate. So I'm like, yeah.
That's so real.
It's okay though. I'm retraining it though. I'm like, this has got to be good for me somehow.
Right. So
Like learning how to concentrate again.
did you move to Japan for school, or was that just a completely
Yeah,
separate
yeah,
decision?
yeah. So like, it was kind of like a kill two birds with one stone
Mm-hmm.
type situation where like I was already studying Japanese for like a year before I came here, and then I came to visit last year, and I was like, oh, this place is really cool. Like I could totally see myself like living here.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, like based on like the what's it called, the conversion rate for the currency, it's like a lot cheaper to live here compared to the US, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
like also happy about. But I was like talking to one of my friends who lives here about it, and I was gonna just like try to get a visa just to like do my like YouTube and TikTok shit just here, because like if you make over a certain threshold of earnings, you can just come and like live here essentially for up to 6 months. But he was like, hey, why don't you come and go to language school, because it's way easier to get a student visa than to like try to get a work visa. And he's like, also like you'll learn Japanese way better, so you can like contribute to society. And I was like, you make a fair point. And it's not like ridiculously expensive either. I feel like it's like for both my like dorm and schooling for 6 months, it was like $5,000. So it's like $1,000 a month for both school and like staying in my dorm. So I was
That
like,
is
yeah, that's like significantly cheaper than living where I live in the States. Like one quarter of the price,
Right.
honestly. So I was like, hell yeah, it can't be beat. Yeah, so I'm like here to learn Japanese more because it's also an like immersive environment. But I also kind of wanted to just like come here. But
Yeah.
definitely, there's been days where I'm like, I kind of wish I wasn't in school so I could just do whatever the fuck I want. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, I have a test tomorrow. I have to stay up late and study. I'm like, I'm too old for this. Like, I
Yeah.
can't.
I,
Yeah.
I was in Japan in May. It was only for about a week, and
Mm-hmm.
I was more in the like Tokyo Bay area, and then I stayed
Oh,
in
yeah.
Shibuya for a few days. But
Oh, nice, nice.
especially like the Tokyo Bay area, it's just like it feels so
It's
livable.
crazy.
It's
No,
so crazy.
100%. It's really like that was the thing that really like stuck out to me when I came here the first time. Was I was like, I feel like, because I'm not like, I live in a pretty rural area like in the States, and so like I've never like I like cities, but I'm not like I don't think of myself as someone who like wants to live in a city
Mm-hmm.
really, because I like appreciate like quiet and like nature and stuff. But like coming here, I was like, this is like the first city I've been to where I'm like, I feel like I could live here because it's like clean, quiet. There's like so much to do. I'm like, there's pretty much like I don't know. They've got it on lock here. Like they figured it out.
That's so
It's
sick.
impressive.
How
And it's
was
so convenient. Like everything's so convenient too. I feel like, which is crazy. Like the whole like train system. Like I'm like, damn, public transit that actually works and it's like not scary to go on.
yeah,
It's crazy. America could never. America could
America
never.
could never. The train system was like the best part. It was
No,
looked at the map
100%. I
for like a
remember like
minute.
geeking out the first time I went. I was like, oh my god, no one's like, it's not. No one's yelling. No one's like making a mess. Like, damn, this is awesome. Like I'm not overstimulated right now. This is crazy. Yeah,
That's awesome.
but
How would you say so since you were talking about being in school and not being able to like do
oh
whatever you
yeah,
want all the time,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how'd you say being in school affects like, because obviously you make your own music, you do beat remakes, you do
Mhm.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
does how does school affect that kind of process for you?
That's a great question. I've honestly been like fighting for my life a little bit in terms of like, finding enough time in the day to do everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
been good though. I've been definitely finding the balance of all of that. Like I definitely prioritize doing the beat remakes. Like that's kind of always been my like number one thing. Even when I was in college, I'm like doing that is more important to me than like getting my degree, which sounds like weird to say, but
Mm-hmm.
I was like it's a like an arts degree. I'm like this is the thing that is working for me
Mm-hmm.
and that I'm passionate about and I care about. So I'm going to like make sure to make the time for this compared to so like the creative stuff has definitely fallen a little bit by the wayside. Like I haven't really made anything new, I would say, since I got here. But that's not honestly super weird for my personal creative process. Like I have over the last couple years I've kind of found this thing that works well for me. It's kind of weird, but like I won't really make music for like 6 months at a time, or like 6 or 7 months, and then I will just have like a burst of creativity, and I'll make like a whole album's worth of stuff in like the span of usually like a month. So like I'll make like 8 or 9 tracks in like 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'll like do that. Be like, cool, awesome. Then I'll like go and live life for another 6 months and not like really make anything. And then like when it comes back to me, it's it's nice. It's a little scary because sometimes I'm like, is this gonna be the last one? Like, is it never gonna come? You know, like, am I never gonna feel inspired again? But kind of like learning to trust that like when when it feels right, I'll like do stuff.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But it's definitely I feel like it's putting a lot of faith in the universe. I think it's good though. I'm a big subscriber to the idea that like you kind of have to live life to like make good art. So like I think like it's honestly good for me to be like, okay, cool. I'm gonna like just go and exist and like soak in the world and like get new experiences for half a year and then channel that into the next thing I make, you know.
Right. And
But
I feel like that process is a lot better than just kind of trying to force yourself to make stuff just for
no,
the purpose of making things. I feel like it makes
no,
the
for
quality a
sure.
lot better.
100%. And it's like a funny thing too because it's like I say like, oh, I'm not making music. I haven't for the last like, month and a half, but like I still open FL like a couple hours, like three or four times a week to like do beat remix. So like on the technical side, I'm still like flexing those muscles, you know, and like doing that. So the nice thing is like I'm not losing my proficiency because I'm still like, it's like a really good way to almost like keep my skills fresh, but without like the creative side of it, if that makes
No,
sense.
yeah, for sure.
So
That's
yeah, it's kind of a cool little thing that ends up being beneficial to my own like creative process as well. Like on top of like it also being my job and like what pays the bills, which is cool. So I'm very thankful that I get to do that because I'm like I definitely would be a way worse producer if I didn't spend all those hours like recreating sounds and stuff.
right.
So
Right.
it works out well. It's a nice like silver lining.
Yeah, and I feel like that it worked. Like I completely understand what you're saying. I'm doing like any kind of creative stuff, and even like for me, video editing. Like I
Yeah.
edit pretty much every time I can in my free time, and just flexing like you
Yeah.
said, flexing those muscles makes it so much
100%.
so much easier in the long run when it gets to bigger
And
stuff
like
you're trying to do.
I feel like you don't even like realize how much of a difference it makes until you like compare yourself. Like it's the same thing like with like video editing. Like I switched my video format like a month and a half ago when I got here because I don't have speakers yet. I'm still just like running off a MacBook.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I can't film my videos the way I used to when I was back in America because that required like recording audio from my speakers. So like, oh, I'll just do screen recorded like videos now.
Mm-hmm.
But that means I've been having to use Premiere to edit all my stuff instead of doing it on TikTok. And even just in the last month and a half of like using Premiere 3 times a week just to edit stuff, I've noticed I've gotten like way faster. So I don't know. People always ask me like, oh, like how can I get better at whatever like skill like producing whatever? I'm like, just do it. Just do it. That's how you get better. Like you just have to do it. And you know, I think it also kind of requires you to like what you want to get good at too, which is kind of unfortunate for some people because I think some people don't necessarily enjoy the process. Like they just want to be good at it without having to like put in the hours. But I'm like, unfortunately, there really is no like magic formula to getting better at something besides just like doing it over and over again, which is like, if you like doing it, then that's not too bad. But like that's why I feel like it's important to pursue things that you actually like care about because
Right.
it's like you want to find something that you enjoy doing over and over and spending hours doing every week and also sucking at. Like you got to be able to have fun sucking at something to get good at it, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, exactly. And I feel like it really shows like what you actually like and don't like, because at the end of the day,
No,
like
for
you said,
sure.
if you're not willing to put in however many hours it takes to actually learn how to do something or get better, whether that's producing, video editing, literally any creative thing in the entire world. If you don't like it,
No,
you're
100%.
not gonna want to put in the hours for it.
No, 100%. And like everyone's got to, everyone sucks in the beginning. I mean, some people suck less than other people, and some people have like talents for things. But like,
Right.
everyone like, I don't know. You gotta get comfortable with the idea of being bad at stuff.
Right.
I feel like.
The more
I know. I feel like especially as I've gotten older, like I've like found myself becoming more impatient with stuff. Where I'm like, oh, I don't like sucking at stuff. Like I only want to do stuff I'm gonna be good at. I'm like, well, I'm never gonna get good at anything ever again if I like, I'm scared of being bad.
exactly.
But I don't know.
Yeah, you really just have to do it. I remember this like not too long ago. I watched my very first YouTube video over again, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man,
Oh
this
yeah,
editing
yeah.
is rough. Because I remember I learned how to edit like probably a week before, or like I started learning probably a week before I posted that video. So I was using these crazy fonts. I was trying to
That's
like I was trying to do these like images all over the place. I'm like looking at my style now where it's more minimalistic. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
whew.
Yeah, no,
But-
definitely. That's always it's like a very fun like thing to do, like looking back at your older stuff. Like I find it so like difficult too. But like I feel like learning to appreciate like you wouldn't be where you are now without that, like it's like
Exactly.
this has to exist for me to be at the point that I'm at now. Like there's no way to like skip that beginning part.
Right.
And I feel like I've also been trying to learn to like appreciate and have like love for older things because there's even been like music videos from like a year or two ago where I'm like, oh, it's like this is so bad compared to my newer stuff. But I'll have like friends like, no, like this video is great. Like why are you like hating on it? Like, I'm like, well, I just feel like I could have done it so much better. They're like, it's still good though. Like if you remove like the critical lens, you can still be like, okay, this is like I can still find enjoyment in this, even though I feel like I could do it better
Right.
now.
I wanted to touch on your journey through sound design first, because obviously you're at a point in your sound design where you're making your own music. You're able to remake beats that you hear comfortably enough to where you can have this following. I wanted to touch on where you started and how that became something you were interested in.
That's a great question. I would say it all began about a decade ago, which is kind of crazy to not almost a decade ago. I started producing in like mid 2015 when I was 15 years old, freshman in high school, or I think right before I like started my freshman year of high school. But I was really into like electronic music and dubstep at the time, and like that's really all I wanted to make back then. And I'm sure like if you know anything about dubstep, you know that it's a pretty like sound design heavy genre. So I think like through the process of learning music production, sound design was always so like heavily like attached to that for me because I was like, oh, I want to make these like crazy bass sounds and do all this like crazy stuff that I hear in tracks. And I think I also just found a lot of like joy in the process of like making all my sounds from scratch. Like I definitely had a bit of the as a 16-year-old like the elitist mindset of like, oh, using presets is cheating. Like, I gotta like do it all myself. And then I kind of found I was like, oh, I actually really liked doing this. And it's like a good skill to learn. And even though, like, looking back, a lot of the stuff that I probably thought that I was doing that was cool probably sounds really bad now, like, comparatively. It definitely was, I think it helped me get my foot in the door with, like, the idea of, like, okay, I'm just gonna, like, open Serum and just, like, mess around and just, like, try to make something cool. And just, like, watching YouTube tutorials and, like, hearing other people's stuff and, like, trying to figure out, how they did their stuff. But, like, a lot of it really just was, like, opening up Serum and just like trying all of the knobs and just like seeing what they do and then stumbling upon things and being like, wait, this is how this sound was made that I really like. I'm like, oh shit, that's how they made this one sound. Like stumbling upon like techniques, etc. Or like seeing a YouTube video, but like, oh, did you know you can use a noise oscillator to FM a sine wave and it sounds like this? I'm like, oh my god, this is crazy. So just like really just like blindly stumbling around and just like trying every knob. It's like it sounds very like cliche, but like I feel like if you want to get good at like using a tool, just like going in and be like, cool, I'm just gonna take the time to really like turn every knob, like flip every switch, and just like see and listen, because that's the great part about sound design too, is like you get instant feedback with everything. So like you can turn a knob and hear exactly what that does, and if you can like remember like, okay, cool, turning this knob like makes it sound this way, then you can like, okay, what if I like combine that with this other thing? And then I don't know. It's a very interesting, yeah, it's an interesting thing. And like I was probably like decent at dubstep sound design. I definitely wasn't great, but then I switched more towards like hip hop / hyperpop inspired stuff when I was like getting out of high school. So like when I was like 18, 17. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna still try to take that like sound design approach that I had from dubstep and apply that to like more hip hoppy stuff. And then it kind of ended up like getting to the point where like, I started doing the TikToks and the YouTube where I was like, oh, I honestly like it's it sounds funny to say, but I'm like, I don't have the patience to find the presets for these songs. And so I'm just gonna try to remake them myself. And like looking back, like my first year of videos, like they sucked. They were not accurate. They were not good. But like, so much of it though was just like perseverance and just like, I'm just gonna continue to do this, even though like, and at the time I think I was a little blind to it because like, oh, like people are just being haters, like whatever. Like I'll just keep doing it. But like through the process of continuing, even though I sucked, like I got a little bit better, and then I got a little bit more better, and then I continued with that. And I got to a point where I was like, okay, I feel like I can like reliably recreate sounds, etc. But there was like a lot of sucking in there that was like not good and not accurate. But it was kind of like being being okay with that, I don't know. It's been interesting, but a lot of it really was like fake it till you make it, if that makes sense.
Right? No, that's so fair. I feel like that definitely is the best way to learn, especially like any kind of like online software, is because we've gotten so advanced that there's so many different presets, there's so many different tools that have no explanation. There's no there's no one.
Oh no, 100%.
There's no one there to teach you unless someone was nice enough to make a YouTube video or you take like $1 million course.
No, 100%. And like even like looking back at YouTube videos, like yesterday there was like a sound I was like, oh, I remember this like one specific like bass that I heard a shit ton like back in like 2016, 2017 with like deep house. I was like, how did they make this bass? And I watched like 10 tutorials trying to like make this one specific bass sound, and they all sucked. None of them were accurate. I'm like 10 of the, and they all had like hundreds of thousands of views. I'm like, damn, it can be really dry out there. Like for like, if you're trying to find specific tutorials on stuff, like there'll be like 2 people and they don't know what they're talking about. I don't know. It's interesting. Like you really do just gotta like try to do it yourself.
That's so real. Now, when did you decide that you wanted to make your own music? Because obviously there's, in my head, there's like two separate worlds between the beat remix and then the whole like crazy world you've been building within your own musical persona.
For sure.
So how did that become a thing?
I mean, honestly, like my journey as like an artist, like I feel really lucky, and I kind of always felt lucky because I remember really specifically I think I was in like 7th grade, and I think I found, what was it? I had like just like found like Dead Mouse's music and like Monster Cat. So I was listening to a lot of like electronic stuff, and I remember being like, this is like the coolest thing in the world to me. Like this is like what I want to do. Like hearing that music, I'm like, I want to like be a DJ and produce electronic music. And I just was like, yeah, that's it. Like that's what I want to do with my life, is just like be a musician. And so I like told my parents, and they're like, cool, we're gonna sign you up for production lessons at like our local like music store. And so like I just did that, and like ever since I was like 13, I kind of just like knew. I was like, yeah, I just want to be like a musician. Like I just want to produce. And I've never really like, that desire has never really faltered, I would say. Like I've been pretty steady on that. Like, yeah, this feels like this is what I was like put on earth to do. Like this is the thing that brings me like the most joy in life. So I'm gonna like try to like make it happen. You know, even though it's, going into arts can be a little scary, etc. My parents have always been really supportive, which is super
And
nice.
that's always great.
No, for sure. I feel like super duper lucky. And yeah, they've always been really like go after it. And then like when it started like working out and I started like turning it into a job, they were like, "See, it's just good job." Like they're very happy, and they whenever they tell people about it, they're always very proud, which is very sweet. I'm like, I feel really
so
lucky.
sick.
I know a lot of people don't have that same level of like support, because it is like going into the arts is like scary and uncertain, I still feel like I have no idea what's gonna happen with like my own personal music and stuff. Like like I feel like on the side of like social media, it's like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Like it's paying the bills. I feel like I'm at a good point with that. Like I don't necessarily like, it doesn't feel like an uncertain thing anymore. But like with my own stuff, I'm like, yeah, I don't know where it's gonna go or what's gonna happen because of it. Which is cool though. I kind of appreciate, the level of mystery and like uncertainness. I feel like it almost is like motivational in a way.
Very.
'Cause I feel like you can almost, if you get to a certain point, like, okay, cool, what do I do from here? Because that's how I kind of feel a little bit with TikTok. Like it's like, cool, I know what I'm doing. I have a set schedule. It's fun. I enjoy doing it. It's like, it's cool, but like doesn't have quite that same level of like, ooh, like I gotta like get after this, and like how can I like elevate this to a new level and like continue to like push myself creatively, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely would say, yeah, I've known for a long time that I like wanted to do music, and then yeah, like I said, I started with dubstep, did that for a couple years, and I think I found like Brockhampton and like Tyler the Creator. And then I was like, okay, well, this is cool. So I wanted to make emo rap. So I had an emo rap group at the end of high school with a couple of my buddies, which we made like 2 songs, and then that completely fell apart. Then I like started, then I started the original Thayerperiod alias, which was probably in like 2019, but it was Thayer with a period, not the word period. But that was not search engine optimized. So I think after like a year, I switched to like a year or two. I think I switched to like the word Thayerperiod. But like the kind of the thought process behind the name was like, I was like, oh, this feels like music that's like more true to myself. Because that's also when I started doing like singing / vocals on my stuff. Like when I was doing dubstep, I didn't really do vocals, even though I was like in choir. I didn't really do vocals on my stuff. It was mainly just production. I was like, oh, I want to start incorporating my voice more into my music. And I was like, oh, this feels like a more true reflection of like, my music is just me. Like, it's just an extension of me as a person. So I'm like, oh, Thayerperiod. Like, that's what it is. It's Thayerperiod. That's like what my music is. So.
That makes so much sense after like being broken down. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny. It's definitely like, when you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, it's actually kind of a, it's very literal. It's very literal.
Right.
But
yeah, because that's so awesome, and because I found out about you through my friend Vaughn, who's also a producer, and I remember he had reposted. I don't remember if it was a beat remake or it was like promo for one of your songs, but I remember I remember seeing it. And I was like, first off, the fact that you can condense all of this into 30 seconds is insane. Evil work. And then I was like, okay, so they have to make music. Like 100%. Spotify link. Listen to, I forgot what song it was. I think it was 10,000 Dogs.
Oh, let's go. That's a good one.
Brain absolutely exploded. It was.
Thank you.
It was like a.
It definitely. it definitely feels a little bit like it's really funny. I feel like when I'm always so curious, like people who find my music through my like TikTok and YouTube, because it's so I feel like different than the stuff that I remake. You know, like I feel like I like my honest like I feel like it's completely up in the air like how people are good because I've had so many people be like I love your remakes like God you make awful music. They'll be like I hate what you do, like why you have clearly have this like technical skill, why do you waste it making this kind of music? I'm like, well, it's just like what I like to make, you know. But then the other side too, obviously, like people do find it and like it, but I've definitely had many people be like, you know, if you made more like similar music to the kind of stuff you post on like TikTok, like you would probably be way more successful. I'm like, yeah, but like I'm cool and like I make what I like to make, you know, and it like what I do make brings me the most joy. So like I would much rather like do it in a way that's like authentic to myself and like pursue, you know, whatever it feels like it's, you know, making me happy at the time.
Exactly.
To
I'd much rather you make music you want to make than making albums that sound like Playboi Carti every time you
I know.
upload music.
I know, and the thing is, I would probably be like, you know, have a be a bit more successful if I did that. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I think it's fun too because it shows that I can do it if I want to. You know, like with the remakes, like it's like I have the technical ability, but like yeah, I don't know, I'd rather just make weird stuff.
Right. Hey, and the weird stuff is awesome. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Of course. All right. Next question, and my notes already closed out. Holy. All right. So, within the last, I think it's been within the last probably year or two or so, you've dropped the food EP, right? And then
food EP, yeah.
Food EP, and you've also been working on your own solo project, Leech. I wanted to ask.
Oh yeah.
I want to go into Leech more in a moment, but I want to ask about the kind of the process of working on two completely separate projects, seemingly at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when the timeline for the food EP was, but they.
I can yeah, the timeline it gets a little messy. Normally I release things like what's like in a linear timeline, like in order that I make them, but like the food EP like really threw a wrench in that whole thing. Like it's crazy. Like so to really go into like All Dogs Go to Heaven was made, I think like let's see, about a year before it came out. So not last summer, but like 2 summers ago. And then my like upcoming album Mongoose, I made that not last fall as in like 6 months ago, but like a year and 3 months ago was when I made Mongoose. So like I made Mongoose about like 6 months after I made All Dogs Go to Heaven. And so we're talking like Mongoose is like a year and a half-ish old. By the time it comes out, it's gonna be about a year and a half old. The food EP was made in like June through August of the summer that just happened. So it's like a year ahead of Mongoose. And the whole reason that happened was I found out that Seymour the Seal lived close to me, which I did not know. And honestly, like I knew of him, and like I'd seen him around, etc., like on the internet. But like we hadn't really talked. But I was like looking for more kind of like music friends in the area, and so like we started hanging out, and we kind of like instantly clicked. Like we just like our personalities, like we got along really well. And as I like dove more into his music and he dove more into my music, we're like, oh, like even though like our stuff sounds quite different, I think we approach creating in a really similar way. So I was like, oh, you know what's something like I've always wanted to do that I've never done is like a collab project. And he's like, oh yeah, like that could be fun. And I was like, you know what? We should just like make it about food because like I love food, he likes food, and I feel like it kind of encapsulated both of our senses of humor a bit. Like we're both very, I'd say, like goofy people. Like we find the same kind of stuff funny, which is definitely like it tends to fall on the more absurd side. So I was like, what if we just like made a full EP about food? And yeah, like we just started it. And also we knew that I was leaving in January to move to like Japan. So we were like, okay, we have like a timer, like on like definitely we probably would have put it out later if like I was gonna be around longer, but we're like we know we have a limited time together because I'm moving. So we're like, okay, cool, let's just do this super fast. And honestly, it was like it came together really quickly. Like a lot of those songs were made in the span of like I feel like there's a couple weeks where like we made like 3 or 4 songs in like the span of a couple of days because he would just like come up with a melody, send it to me, like I would flip it, add drums, and add more synths. I would record my part, send it back to him, and like yeah, like it was pretty amazing, honestly. Like our workflow was super cohesive. And we also were like, neither of us had really played a show before, so we're like, oh, we should also play a show when the EP comes out. So like we did a whole release show in Vermont, which was super cool. So it's kind of, we're like, cool, like how can we just make this like a whole experience, you know? And it was just a super cool way to like expand our friendship, etc. And like also just like do something that neither of us had really done with like a collab album, and then also playing a show. So like I think very fondly upon that like period of like 3 or 4 months. Like we just really like we got to it. And then we're like, well, we want to release it, you know, and do the show like before I go, obviously. So we're like, yeah, we're gonna like slot this ahead of everything else we had going on, because he has like stuff in his back catalog too. But I was like, yeah, I'm breaking the the Thayerperiod canon for you, because like normally the stuff I release is like in a linear order, like, you know, I like tend to release stuff like in the order that I make it, usually about a year after I make it. But I was like, you know what? We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna expedite this.
Thayerperiod spin-off project. That's
exactly.
That's
and I thought it was really funny too, because like I feel like a lot of my work, if you look at it like, it's definitely tends to fall a bit more on the serious side. Like it's like there's still like, I think All Dogs Go to Heaven is quite a fun project. Like there's definitely some like silliness in there. But like nothing quite like touches the level of like the Food EP. I feel like it really is like ridiculous. So like I feel like going from that, like releasing like Leech in September and having like a song about like eating people and like all this like horror claymation stuff, and then releasing a full project about like food that I like, I'm like, this is just like, it makes me laugh. I'm like, I just love the tonal contrast. I'm like, I feel like it keeps people on their toes. You know.
Exactly.
So yeah,
I remember watching the video for that song you're talking about, and I remember being wow, this is like really cool. And I remember going in the comments, and everyone was like terrified. They're like, what's going on?
I was so great. I was so happy. I was like, I feel like a lot of times it's really funny. I think I often feel kind of awkward and like not like, I definitely like would not consider myself like a kind of menacing or scary person, especially to like people that know me in real life. So I really was like with the idea of like making this project that's like very like horror themed, like with Mongoose. I was really like, how can I make something that's like genuinely kind of scary? Because it's so different from everything I've ever done. Because I've definitely always kind of tried to approach it from more of the angle of just like sincerity, which I think is like something I do really care about and something I like. But I was like, yeah, like, is it possible for me to like make something in a way that is like genuinely kind of spooky? And like, I was just so happy. Like the videos for Leech and Paranoia Agent, like those are like my 2 favorite things I've ever made. Like, I was like, wow. Like watching it back, I'm like, it freaks me out a little bit. I'm like, oh, this is so cool, because it really feels like it's definitely like out of the ballpark of my normal kind of like approach to stuff. So the fact that I was able to like execute on that, like I was like, yes, this is cool. Like it was a challenge that I set for myself, and I'm really happy I was able to like, I feel like, do it justice.
That's beautiful. That's so sick.
Thank you.
Now with Mongoose, what is like, so you obviously said it's a lot on like the more horror side of things. Is there like a specific storyline that you're gonna follow like in a concept album kind of way, or is it kind of like a song by song basis?
That's a really good question. It kind of like, it's really funny. I originally was gonna try to make a short film that tied in with the album, and I had concepts written up for everything, but like it didn't end up happening. Like it was an ambitious goal, and I kind of just ended up running out of time to like make it happen, which I'm okay with. I think it definitely would be something I'd be interested in like pursuing in future. But there is definitely like, I would say it's a bit of a red herring of an album, because if you look at it on the surface level, you'll hear there's a lot of like talk of like horror stuff, like cryptid stuff, kind of like grandiose imagery of like, okay, kind of like, you know, spooky stuff. But like the actual core, I'm kind of giving it away, honestly, but the core narrative, if you listen, is really attached to like my experience like making music and like existing as an artist in the music industry. Like a lot of it is really about like perseverance and like uncertainty of like knowing if things are going to work out, and like the feeling of like I don't know, of like, is this worth it, like the amount of like struggle I go through and like the way that it makes me feel sometimes, like the stress of being an artist, like does it feel like it's worth it. So like even though on surface level it seems like very like ooh, like it's very loud and like oh it's like all the spooky stuff, like at the core it's really about like persevering despite the fact that I kind of feel like the music industry like does not want you as like an independent artist to succeed, if that makes sense. So it's like, even though it's very like flashy and like ooh, I don't know, at its core it has a very, I'd say, a very like, its narrative is based strongly in reality,
Right.
if that makes sense. But I'm curious how many people are going to kind of parse that together, like through the kind of like surface level like look of it. It definitely, like, I'd say it's something like, looking at the lyrics, I think you could see it. But I think if you just listen to it without like thinking about it on a deeper level, you know, it's maybe a little less apparent. But
Right.
yeah.
Well, then this will be the ultimate Easter egg for people that are,
Yeah,
trying
for
to figure
real.
it out.
100%. It's funny too. Like with that project, I definitely like talked about that. But then I actually already have my next album also done pretty much. So like I have two full albums in the bank right now. Just crazy. But the next one like leans into that even more, I would say, of the feeling of like feeling uncertain about like being an artist and the stress of that, and like the feeling of being perceived and like oh, like, you know, like is it worth it, like this, like, and like, you know, just like all the stuff of being a musician. And I just think it's kind of funny. It's that like it's very like Ouroboros almost, like I'm making music talking about being a musician, and like it just feels very funny, like it's like a infinite feedback loop almost. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm not making music about the things that are like going on outside of my music, like I'm making music about my own music. I don't know, it's a very like kind of trippy,
Very meta.
yeah, exactly. It's like kind of weird to think about, but like I think like weirdly my music is gonna, I think the people it's gonna connect with the most are other musicians, especially from like this project, and then especially the next project. Like I think like on a lyrical level, like if you're an artist who's ever like been through the struggles of being an artist, like I think you're gonna connect with it a lot more than someone who hasn't made any kind of art. Which I think is kind of exciting. Like I feel like hopefully it's gonna be engaging to that crowd.
I think it'll definitely resonate with the crowd you're trying to. Even if it doesn't seem super apparent at first, I feel like if that is the situation people are in, they'll attach themselves to that.
Oh, totally. But also, like, you know, it can be whatever. You know, I think I'm also a firm believer in like, however people decide to like analyze art is like a valid meaning. You know,
Right.
like I can't tell anyone like that there's a specific way you have to consume something. Like if you get something completely different out of it, then that is completely valid interpretation. You know.
Right.
But
Now, you touched on your music videos, and that is another thing I wanted to ask you about, because they are so cool. Two,
thank you.
they are crazy. You got some crazy music videos, and I wanted to pick
Thank
your
you.
brain about how you
Yeah.
even come up with that, and then how it becomes a reality when you're trying to produce something like that.
That's a great. I mean, honestly, it's kind of the approach I've kind of always taken is like, what would be like a fun thing to do for a song? Like, what do I envision when I listen to it? But so much of it is just like off the cuff stuff of like, okay, like what would be kind of cool? Like, I'll see something on like TikTok or YouTube, like, oh, this inspires me. Like, how can I incorporate this into like for 10,000 dogs, like for that music video specifically, like I remember just like hearing that there was like a dog farm in Vermont where you could like go and like hang out with like 40 golden retrievers, and I was like, this has got to be this. This has to be this. But like, yeah, I don't know, honestly. It kind of just like comes to me, which is such a bad answer because like it really doesn't go into the. But I don't know. I kind of just try to. I think I just try to do stuff that I would find interesting as like a consumer, and I'd say I'm really a lot of my favorite artists, one of the reasons I like them so much is the fact that they put a lot of time and effort into their music videos. Like Young Lean specifically is probably my like goat of music videos. Like when he was rolling out his like Stars album, I completely by the way, I'm gonna like confess on camera. I completely jacked his entire like promotional strategy, which is fine because I'm no one compared to him. But when he was releasing his Stars album, he made like a short mini music video for every song and then posted them in the month leading up to his album, to like the album coming out. And I remember seeing that and being like, this is literally like the coolest thing in the world for like world building. Like when that project came out, I felt like it was so much more than just the songs on it, because I had like a unique visual identity for each song based on the videos I saw for it. And I was like, oh, I really want to like try to emulate that. So I think I definitely was like, I don't know, it like really opened my mind to the like idea that you can like increase the, I don't know, the presence of a song by like adding striking visuals to it, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's also a reason, like one of the reasons I feel like because people do tell me that they think my music has a pretty strong identity, and I really do think the visual aspect is like pretty key in that, because I feel like so many of my songs without the visuals wouldn't hit nearly as hard, if that makes sense. You know, like Paranoia Agent, like that song, like it's cool, but then like when you see like me wrapped up in like mummy bandages, like doing all this crazy shit, like whoa, this is crazy, you know. But like they attach and like become like the sum is greater than the parts. I feel like,
and that was literally
so I don't know.
That was literally the video on my mind too. It was Paranoia Agent, because I remember watching that video and being like, this is so sick, and like it fits perfectly to the song. Because whenever you have, like you were saying, whenever you have music videos that like in your mind is completely what the song like is envisioned, you watch the video, you listen to the song, and it just mesh, and then you have to relate the two.
No, 100%. I feel like it's such a powerful like storytelling, and I really like I feel like music videos are becoming a bit of a not as popular thing now, because I feel like it really, unfortunately, like it doesn't seem like it's worth it a lot of the time for artists, especially like smaller artists where you don't know how many people are gonna see something. You know, like I feel like I've always had the like, since I have like a decently followed like YouTube channel, I'm like, I might as well make a music video, because this is gonna be the best way for me to like get that audience, try to sell them on my music, is like using this platform I already have. So that's always been kind of good motivation. But like spending like a bunch of hours and effort filming something, and like maybe hiring like equipment and like, and then like not even knowing if anyone's gonna see it, like I feel like it's a big time sink to like pretend not know if it's gonna go anywhere.
Right.
So I definitely, but it sucks though, because it's like I really feel like music videos are such a cool concept that, you know, it's becoming a bit of a dying art form. But
yeah.
a lot of people still do that stuff. But I don't know. I want to try and keep it alive a little bit. Like it's definitely not, I've always really appreciated music videos. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is like a cool way to. It's a fun creative outlet that's not really. It's like musical but not musical. Like it's like I get to. I don't know. It's a cool other way to express my creativity, I feel like.
Right.
But,
and that's something I wanted to make a video about for a while. It's just kind of how, like you said, music videos have been kind of cast aside, especially for smaller artists that don't really have that following. Either that, or they are just like so low effort now. Like you don't have nearly the amount of storytelling that you had in older music videos. Which is 100%. Why yours going back to like Paranoia Agent art so sick.
Thank you. Yeah, it definitely. I think it's. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 2025 is going to be the year that we bring music videos back.
2025 is.
And I think also really like back in the day, like a music video could blow you up. I feel like as an artist, and I feel like nowadays that doesn't really happen. Like you don't hear about an artist succeeding because they put out a really good music video, and then that, like, occasionally that happens, but like much more, like I feel like I can, even thinking back like 5, 6, 7 years ago, like artists that like Post Malone with like White Iverson. I remember when that video came out, like he blew up because of that music video. But like I don't know, now it's like TikTok. I feel like, you know, like short form. Well, and almost in a way, it's almost like the art form is morphing. I feel like where like short form video is becoming. Like, since short form video is like the predominant, you know, content thing right now, like if you want to like get your music out there, like short form music videos, I feel like there's a lot of potential there for like having striking visuals and like using that to like propel yourself, but like it doesn't quite fit the same. Like you can only do so much in 30 seconds, you know.
And yeah.
I would know. I've made a lot of 30-second videos.
Right, and then on top of that, there's only so much that if like if you are an artist that blows up massively off of like a song or a TikTok video you made, there's only so much outside of that your audience is going to be willing to go
No,
that
100%.
where they'll remain like part of your core audience, which is why you see everyone like, oh, it's a TikTok song now. Everyone blew it up on TikTok now. No one cares. And I feel like you always run the risk of that, as opposed to on YouTube where people would just be like, wow, this is awesome.
No, 100%. And like legitimately, even like I feel like there are still good music videos being made is the thing. Like even if they're not like blowing artists up quite to the same level. Like I remember even like 2 months ago, I saw like a video with like 10,000 views. I'm like, oh, this looks like kind of interesting. And it was this Japanese rapper named Number Collector. And I just like, oh, this looks interesting. I'm gonna click on it, and I like found this guy, and I'm like, this guy's crazy. This song is crazy. And I messaged him, and then like I ended up sending him beats, and now we have like an unreleased song together, which is cool.
So
but I'm like, music, there is still cool stuff out there. You just you kind of have to like dig for it a little bit more, you know. So it's like, don't give up hope if you like music videos. There's still good people making them. There's still cool shit going around. But like, you gotta like fight to save the thing that you love. You gotta like engage with it, and interact, and like tell people you appreciate it.
If you love it enough, you'll find it if you look hard enough. Definitely.
100%.
Now, the next question I have is, how is it all possible because it's really cool? And I think what I meant by that is,
My brain was like loading for, you know, like the Mac beach ball icon that like it was like trying to process. Sorry.
The way I write stuff down is I just like I spitball, and then I have an idea in my head, and then I remember after reading it. But I
love it. I love that approach.
I remember what I meant by this was, like I mentioned earlier, you have this whole world built out of your artist persona, and all these creative visuals, creative sounds, just all kind of morphing together. How do you continue to draw inspiration for that? Because it's not easy to keep yourself inspired.
No, totally. Like I definitely, like I said, I go through like pretty big creative droughts. Like I'll take a couple months at a time off from like making music because like I feel like I don't really have anything to say. And I think there's a healthy balance of forcing yourself to try and make something even when you're not feeling it, and also trusting your gut and like realizing when you've like lived enough life to have a new thing to say or something that's like worth saying, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I really try to like just consume art like all the time. Like that is honestly my biggest inspiration is like other musicians and like just things I see out in the world. Like I feel like my songwriting has always been very like literal in which like the fact that like I write about the things I see in my life and the things I feel. So it's like there's not necessarily a lot of like grandiose concepts going on there. It's very much like actually just like spitting out what's been going on in my brain for the last couple weeks, or like whatever I feel like has been like on my chest. But I really I am a very strong believer in like the mindset that like art can't exist in a vacuum, and you can't like no art exists without inspiration. So like even if you make something that sounds completely like nothing anyone's ever heard, it came from somewhere. Like you heard something at one point and saw something at one point that you took and then filtered through your own like brain blender and then spit out into this new thing. So like I feel like a lot of the stuff that I make is kind of me like regurgitating ideas that I heard in other places that I liked, but by like through the process of it coming through my lens and like me making it the way that I make stuff, it sounds completely different, if that makes sense. Like I have so many songs where like I can tell you the specific song that inspired like a song. Like I have songs on my past project where I'm like, yeah, like it's a bit of an like a deeper cut. But on my album, Would You Trade Your Hands for Wings, there's a song called What's Eating Me. And I remember I made that after I heard do you know White Armor, the producer? Yeah, so he released like a instrumental project a couple years ago. And I remember listening to that album for the first time. There's this song called Noston, and I heard that song, and I listened to it on repeat for a day. and then I made my song called "What's Eating Me," and they sound completely different. Like if you like listen to them and compare them, they're like they don't really sound like they have any shared identity. But I remember so specifically like that song making me want to make music, and then me making that thing. But like, there's so many cases of that, of me hearing something that like brings me to like, oh my god, like this is so cool, like this makes me so happy, and then me like wanting to create music because of that. Like it's so funny. Like my next project, not Mongoose, the one that comes after that, which is also already done. Spoiler alert. I made that album after hearing the song "Cheerleader" by Porter Robinson for the first time, because I heard that track and I was like, this is crazy. This is like blowing my mind. And like I was like, this just like this makes me want to create. So I just like locked in and I just made a full project. But like I can like very directly tell you that album was really inspired by that song. And like listening to that album when it comes out, you probably wouldn't like there's maybe a little bit of shared DNA, but like barely. Like I don't think if you compare them on a surface level, you're really gonna like be like, really? Like this album exists because of this? Like I don't know. It doesn't seem like it, but I don't know. I think yeah, everything is kind of a regurgitation of other stuff, if that makes sense. But like your unique human experiences are like why it's interesting. You know, I feel like even just through the process of like you trying to make someone else's like recreate something else that you like just by doing it yourself and having it be made by your brain, it's gonna have a unique identity.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
And kind of what you were touching on, yeah, there's a huge difference between like being inspired by something and then completely like ripping it. Because
for sure.
Because like you were saying, Cheerleader and your next album may not sound like at all similar on surface level, but inspiration just works so differently where it just like it really just like fires stuff off in your brain. You're just like,
no, for sure.
It's just so much easier to create, and then you end up making something that's so far removed from like the original sound of whatever you're trying to make. And I think that's what makes it so cool.
No, definitely. I feel like it's almost like trying to chase the feeling that something gives you sometimes. You're like, this song makes me feel this way. I want to make something that also makes me feel this way. And then I feel like it's so often, too, for me, it ends up being like, I'll hear a synth sound that I really like. And so I'll try to like make something similar to that. But then that just becomes my jumping off point. And then I kind of just like go at it. And then it ends up sounding completely different because I'm just taking that one tiny point of inspiration out of context from the original thing and then recontextualizing it into a completely new thing, if that makes sense. And that really like, not to nerd out too much, but like my creative process is very much like chase the dopamine, because I found that that's like what works for me. Like I have to like, when I make music, like I just kind of will like start with something and then I make one thing that I think sounds cool and then I just like build around that essentially. But like I just keep them like, okay, oh, what if I did this? That would sound cool. And then I do it, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Okay, what can I do next? And I just like, I don't know, it's just me having fun essentially. Yeah. Like I found that that's how I have to make music. Like if I'm not having fun, like it usually either doesn't turn out good or I don't end up wanting to finish it. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting.
No, yeah, that's so sick.
Sorry, very long-winded and not
That's
not direct answer.
Perfect for me because I off of these questions I don't know what else to say in the moment. So this you're doing awesome. But
Thank you.
With that,
ignore that.
With that, I don't want to keep this going on too long, but I do have one more question. As kind of an artist and a producer with pretty nice following.
Thank you.
Across a few different platforms. What is your advice? I would say not only to producers trying to get into producing, but just like creative people in general trying to make a name for themselves online. What is your advice for people as far as that goes?
That's a great question. I would say there's definitely a lot of elements. I would say luck is unfortunately a much bigger thing than most people think it is. Like you feel like the chances of like, you never know. It really like, it sounds cliche to say, but like it could just be one day away. And I've kind of been operating on that mindset for the last like 10 years of my life. Like you never know what could be the thing that's going to push you over the edge to get to that point that you want to be. And very often like it doesn't even end up being something you like tangibly notice. Like when I started like doing well on TikTok, like it was like a slow growth. It was steady, but it was slow. Like I don't think I could have predicted that it was going to get to the point that it's at, if that makes sense. But like, I really think when it comes to like the social media side, I would say I'm a big believer in like the more things you put out there, the more opportunities you have to succeed. If that makes sense, like it's what's that like quote from The Office? It's like you miss every shot that you don't take. You know, like even if you like make something cool that you like and you put it out there and it's going where like that's at least another opportunity for people to pick up on something. And you're also by creating more stuff, you are honing your skills. So like nothing is really wasted, I think, in the process of making art. Like even if you make a song that you like and then no one ends up hearing it, like through that process you're getting better at creating. And also you really never know what's going to be the thing that like pushes you.
Right.
So I think just like finding a way to create that you enjoy, that like even if no one hears something, like if you had fun making it and it brings you joy, like that is really important, because I think that's what you need to like stay motivated as an artist. Like you have to enjoy what you're doing. And I think a lot of people end up getting to a certain point where like they don't really enjoy creating because they have all this stuff attached to it, where they're like, oh, things need to be seen by a certain amount of people or be successful at a certain level, or I don't deem this like worthy of my time. I think that's a really poisonous mindset that is like antithetical to making good art. Like you just have to be willing to just like do something for the sake of doing it. Right. If that makes sense. And like I don't think it's also wrong. It's not wrong to want to succeed and have your art be seen. And I struggle with that all the time. Like I'm always like, oh, I wish like are my, you know, just because only this many people saw this thing, does that mean that it's not like a worthy thought of having, or like, oh, like is this not like a message that like is important, or like, you know, because I feel like it's very hard for people, including myself, to detach your personal value from your art. I feel like a lot of people feel like, which is true, you know, your art is a reflection of yourself. So if you put your art into the world and no one seems to connect with it, it feels very much like the world is telling you like, oh, we don't connect with you. Like the value you have as a person is like dictated by, I don't know, which I think is not, I don't know.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in stuff, but I think, just consistency is really important. Having fun with it is really important. Being, I'd say, like unique and like true to yourself, I think is important. Like I think trying to emulate, it's very cliche that I would say this as someone who has a career off of copying other people, but I think like trying to put something out into the like world that is like a true reflection of you will like resonate with more people than you think it might. Like people really do like appreciate seeing kind of like, I don't know, genuine art. I think genuine art is like at least one of my favorite things to consume. Like you can tell like this is just like an encapsulation of a person. But yeah, I'd say just like keep at it, try to have fun while you do it, keep doing it, you know, like even when you're not feeling motivated, just give it a shot.
And I feel like that's especially helpful on like the like content creation side, because I'm still very small, and that the whole...
Sorry, I just nodded in my head. I was like, not in that. It was an agreeable head nod. I wasn't like yeah.
Was like, no, you're fine. That was funny though. Oh. but my like overall following is so pretty small. So that whole mentality of kind of taking every shot that's presented to you is so important. Like the way I got this interview, like just for everyone watching, I had never talked to you before. I didn't have any. We weren't friends before this. I didn't have any contact. You were just doing like a Q&A on Instagram, and I was like, it would be cool if I could interview you. And then after a few months of just trying to plan it finally happened. And that's how I've gone about not only scheduling more interviews, which is kind of how I've been doing it, but just on an overall content creation side, because like at the end of the day, like I make what I want to make, and I feel like doing that, taking every shot to just do what you want to do, in the end, when it gets successful, is going to make you so much more happier than if you got successful quickly off of something that you don't even care about.
100%, yeah, because that's how you burn out. Like I feel like that's how people like end up being like, cool, I don't think I can do this anymore. It's like if you spend all this time doing it in a way that's not authentic to you, and it gets successful, like how long can you know, you want to do it in a way that you can keep doing it forever, ideally, you know, or like at least in a way where you can creatively shift it in a direction that still is enjoyable to you.
Exactly.
I feel like that's why so many people like they blow up and then they kind of fall off the face of the earth after a little while, because it's like they were doing it in a way that like didn't really bring them joy.
Mhm.
They were just doing it for the sake of success. But then that doesn't really feed your soul. I
Exactly.
feel like.
Exactly.
But
No, yeah. Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time to.
of
to
course,
sit
of
down
course,
with
of course.
me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I had a good time.
I'm gonna try and edit this. Hopefully, get it out by the end of next week. But
That's good timing too.
yeah, but like I
I'm
said,
impressed.
I appreciate you sitting down with me. Is there
Of course.
anything you want to leave people with before we sign off?
Besides saying Mongoose comes out February 28th, I think that's probably all I gotta say.
There you go. There you go.
Be kind to people. Make cool art. Make stuff. Take care of yourself. Yeah.
There you go. Words to live by. All right. Well, I won't keep you any longer. Again, I really do appreciate you sitting down with me.
Of course.
Mongoose February 28th. Thayerperiod.
Mongoose
Thank
February
you for
28th.
coming on.
Oh my gosh, of course. My pleasure, my pleasure.
All right. I will see you later. Thank you so much.
Farewell.